Welcome back to the Government Report. Today, we're diving into something that's been making headlines and raising serious questions across Washington and beyond. We're talking about recent incidents in the Oval Office that have people wondering about President Trump's mental sharpness and cognitive abilities. In this installment of the Government Report, we are going to talk about Donald Trump's dementia and why some people are calling it brain misfires. Whether you support Trump or not, these incidents are worth examining because they involve the person making crucial decisions for our country every single day. So, let's break down what's really happening behind those famous Oval Office doors. Recent incidents. People are getting more worried about President Trump's mental sharpness, and those concerns grew after he announced a huge new project called the $175 billion Golden Dome missile defense system. Speaking from the Oval Office, Trump revealed that this system would be built to protect the U.S. from dangerous missiles, including ones that could come from space. The system will use a mix of sensors and interceptors on the ground, in the sea, and space. He compared it to Israel's Iron Dome, but said this one would be much bigger, covering the entire country. Trump said $25 billion will be spent to start the project, and he hopes it'll be fully working by the end of his term in 2029. General Michael Getline from the U.S. Space Force has been chosen to lead the project, showing how serious the administration is about focusing on space defense.
You look over here, and above Ronald Reagan, you have Thomas Jefferson. That's Monroe from the Monroe document.
But during the announcement, Trump made some strange comments that led to more fears about his mental health. As he looked at the portraits of past presidents in the Oval Office, he named the first two correctly, but then had trouble remembering James Monroe. He called him Monroe from the Monroe document, struggling to remember the Monroe Doctrine, which is a basic part of American history taught in schools. This moment, especially during a planned speech, worried many people and led to more talk about whether Trump is mentally fit. The people in the room reacted awkwardly. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth looked surprised, and some Trump supporters in the room gave nervous smiles or laughed uncomfortably. On social media, many pointed out how odd the moment was. One user joked it was like watching a history class led by someone who once claimed the Declaration of Independence was about peace and love. These kinds of mistakes, along with Trump's big promises about the Golden Dome and how fast it will be built, have made people more concerned about whether he fully understands the complex issues he's talking about. The most glaring example was when Trump attempted to discuss energy prices but appeared to forget the word gasoline. Instead, he kept referring to energy prices being down to 1.80 something per gallon, talking about a gallon of energy, without specifying what type of energy he meant. This wasn't just a simple slip of the tongue. It suggested a deeper confusion about basic concepts that any president should understand clearly. When you're the leader of the free world, mixing up fundamental terms about energy policy isn't just embarrassing, it's genuinely concerning. But the problems didn't stop there. Trump went on to make completely false claims about gas prices, stating that energy just hit $1.98 in a couple of states, when the reality was starkly different. Fact checkers quickly pointed out that not a single state had an average gas price below $2.70 per gallon, with the national average sitting at $3.17 per gallon. Even more troubling, gas prices were higher than when President Biden left office, making Trump's claims not just wrong, but backward from reality. The trade deficit confusion. Perhaps even more concerning was Trump's response to a reporter's question about trade relationships with Norway. The exchange revealed what appeared to be a fundamental misunderstanding of basic economic concepts that any world leader should grasp. When a reporter mentioned that statistics showed the U.S. had a trade surplus with Norway, Trump's response was both confusing and revealing. Trump seemed to hear the question wrong or interpret it backward, responding by saying that with the United States, almost everybody has a surplus, and congratulating Norway on their surplus with the U.S. This response showed a complete misunderstanding of what the reporter was asking and demonstrated confusion about basic trade relationships. The reporter was pointing out that the U.S. had a surplus with Norway, meaning we were selling more to them than buying from them, but Trump interpreted this as Norway having a surplus with us. What made this exchange particularly troubling was that it revealed Trump's fundamental misunderstanding of how trade deficits and surpluses work. Experts noted that Trump seems to view trade deficits as something that other countries deliberately create to harm the United States, rather than understanding that they reflect spending patterns relative to production. One economics professor pointed out that Trump's level of understanding is like blaming shop owners for ripping you off when you run up credit card debt by buying things from them. This isn't just about getting facts wrong at the moment. It's about the President of the United States making major economic policy decisions based on a fundamentally flawed understanding of how international trade works. When Trump talks about imposing tariffs or renegotiating trade deals, these decisions have real consequences for American businesses and consumers. If the person making these decisions doesn't understand the basic mechanics of trade, that's a serious problem that goes beyond just verbal gaps. The Oval Office becomes an ambush zone. The concerning patterns aren't limited to Trump's statements about domestic issues. His interactions with foreign leaders in the Oval Office have become what observers are calling a test of nerve that's unlike anything seen in previous administrations. What used to be dignified diplomatic meetings have transformed into unpredictable hour-long sessions that world leaders now approach with genuine anxiety about what might happen. The most notorious example was Trump's explosive confrontation with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in February 2025. What should have been a standard diplomatic meeting turned into a public berating session where a red-faced Trump accused Zelensky of being ungrateful for U.S. military aid. The incident was so intense that Zelensky was reportedly asked to leave the White House and missed lunch. Many observers wondered if this was a deliberate ambush, especially since Vice President J.D. Vance appeared to step in to trigger the confrontation. The Zelensky incident set a new benchmark for dysfunction in diplomatic meetings, and since then, the goal for visiting foreign leaders has been to avoid a Zelensky situation. But the unpredictability continues. During South African President Cyril Ramaphosa's visit in May 2025, Trump suddenly interrupted the meeting to dim the lights and play a video of South African politicians chanting "Kill the Farmer" on a screen set up in the room. The stunned expression on Ramaphosa's face captured the surreal nature of modern Oval Office diplomacy. These incidents reveal more than just poor diplomatic etiquette. They suggest a president who may be struggling to maintain appropriate boundaries and professional behavior in the most important room in the American government. The Oval Office has always been a place where serious business gets conducted, but under Trump, it's become something more like a reality TV set where anything can happen at any moment. Trump himself seemed to acknowledge this when he quipped after the Zelensky meeting that it was going to be great television. Political reactions and growing concerns. The pattern of these incidents hasn't gone unnoticed by political leaders across the spectrum. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz delivered a particularly pointed critique during his State of the State address, directly addressing what he saw as Trump's confusion about how the world works. Walz didn't mince words, saying that Trump has chosen to throw our economy into turmoil and describing him as just plain confused about how the world really works for working people. Walz's comments were particularly striking because they came from a sitting governor speaking in an official capacity, not just a political pundit or opposition figure making partisan attacks. He specifically called out Trump's economic policies as evidence of confusion, noting that the president had slapped a 10% tariff on an island populated only by penguins. While this might sound humorous, Walz pointed out that such decisions have real consequences for working families who end up paying higher prices for basic goods. The governor's assessment that Trump takes the awesome power of the federal government and turns it into a crude weapon wielded by a man who wants to be king reflects growing concerns that go beyond just policy disagreements. These are concerns about the fundamental competence and mental fitness of the person holding the most powerful office in the world. When state governors start publicly questioning the president's basic understanding of how economics and government work, it signals a level of institutional concern that transcends normal political opposition. Social media reactions to these incidents have been equally telling. Comments range from people expressing genuine worry about having someone they perceive as confused making crucial decisions, to others pointing out the stark contrast between how these incidents are covered versus how similar confusion from other politicians might be treated. The overall sentiment seems to be one of growing unease about the cognitive demands of the presidency and whether Trump is meeting them effectively. The broader pattern. What makes these recent incidents particularly worrying is that they're not isolated events, but part of a broader pattern that observers have been documenting. The confusion about basic economic concepts, the inability to stay focused during important diplomatic meetings, and the tendency to make statements that are completely divorced from reality all suggest potential cognitive issues that go beyond normal political spin or even deliberate deception. Mental health experts have noted that the combination of confusion about basic facts, difficulty finding appropriate words, and the tendency to become agitated during routine interactions can be warning signs of cognitive decline. While it's impossible to make a diagnosis without proper medical evaluation, the public nature of these incidents means that millions of Americans are witnessing behavior that would be concerning in any 78-year-old, let alone one holding the presidency. The challenge is distinguishing between moments when Trump might be deliberately misleading the public versus times when he genuinely seems confused or unable to process information correctly. In the case of the egg price claims, for example, the numbers were so wildly off that it's hard to believe anyone would think they were believable as deliberate lies. A 93% decrease in egg prices is such an impossible claim that it suggests either complete disconnection from reality or serious cognitive confusion about basic mathematics. Similarly, the trade deficit confusion goes beyond just getting facts wrong. It reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of concepts that are central to the president's economic policies. When Trump talks about imposing tariffs to address trade imbalances, but doesn't understand what trade imbalances represent, it raises serious questions about the basis for major economic decisions that affect millions of American workers and consumers. What this means for America's future. The implications of these incidents extend far beyond just political embarrassment or partisan point scoring. When the President of the United States appears confused about basic economic concepts or struggles to maintain professional behavior with foreign leaders, it affects America's standing in the world and our ability to function effectively as a democracy. Foreign leaders now approach meetings with Trump with strategies designed to avoid triggering unpredictable outbursts, rather than focusing on advancing their country's interests through normal diplomatic channels. This fundamentally changes how international relations work and potentially undermines America's ability to build the kind of stable, productive relationships that are essential for addressing global challenges like trade, security, and climate change. Domestically, the confusion about basic economic facts affects real policy decisions that impact American families every day. When the president doesn't understand how trade works but is making decisions about tariffs, or when he's confused about energy prices but is setting energy policy, those misunderstandings get translated into policies that affect what we pay for goods and services. Perhaps most importantly, these incidents raise fundamental questions about the cognitive demands of the presidency and whether our current systems are adequate for identifying and addressing potential fitness issues. The presidency is arguably the most cognitively demanding job in the world, requiring the ability to process vast amounts of complex information, make split-second decisions with global implications, and maintain focus and composure under enormous pressure. As we move forward, Americans will need to grapple with these questions, not just about Trump specifically, but about how we evaluate and ensure the fitness of anyone who holds this crucial office. The incidents we've discussed aren't just political theater. They're windows into the real-world functioning of our democracy's most important institution. Whether you're a Trump supporter or critic, we all have a stake in ensuring that whoever sits in the Oval Office is truly capable of handling the immense responsibilities that come with the job. The coming months will likely bring more scrutiny of these issues, as the public, the media, and political leaders continue to evaluate what these patterns of behavior mean for our country's future. What's clear is that these aren't just normal political controversies. They're fundamental questions about competence, cognitive fitness, and the future of American leadership on the world stage. But now, we want to hear from you. Do you think these incidents are just slips? Or do they reveal something deeper about Trump's mental state? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more updates.